After my recent best under $250 video, today we'll be looking at the best sports and smartwatches under $100. Now this also includes things like smart bands and smart straps, since these tend to be a bit cheaper but still have very good performance. Now as always, we'll do systematic and scientific testing, focusing on data and data quality. The main features we will check here are heart rate tracking during exercise, sleep stage tracking performance, and also a quick look at GPS tracking. By the way, for those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral scientist specializing in biological data analysis. Now, a few remarks I do have to make here. First of all, I used recent prices, first using the Amazon listing, and if it wasn't on Amazon, I used the price from a reputable website. Now this isn't the perfect method and prices will fluctuate, but I think it's good enough for general impressions. Second, a lot of the testing, or actually most of it, was done on my body, which means performance might vary on other people. However, again, I think this is good enough to get a general impression of performance of different devices and different brands. So let's get started and let's see what device under $100 is best for you. Now, there were only a limited number of devices I somewhat recently tested with a price under $100. But as always, we'll start with the heart rate tracking performance, and this is for indoor cycling, so I'll be focusing on heart rate tracking performance during different exercises. And one of the easiest exercises for a device to track is indoor cycling, also called spinning, where we compare the heart rate tracking as measured by a device to the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, which is an ECG chest strap that is one of the most reliable ways of measuring your heart rate. It's been used in several scientific studies. Now, there will always be a tiny bit of inaccuracies, but under most circumstances, that's the best way of measuring your heart rate. So we'll be comparing the heart rate tracking of these devices to the Polar H10, and there's actually quite a few options out there. Now, I also included another chest strap to sort of see what is the best performance you can get, and that's this Wahoo Tracker heart rate monitor, another brand, another algorithm that almost gives the exact same heart rate tracking. In this plot, along the horizontal axis, we have the correlation with the reference device, the higher the better, and on the vertical axis, based on that correlation, I ordered the watches from worst to best. So the further to the top right the device is, the better is its agreement with the reference device. Now, as is maybe expected, some of the best correlation you will get with another chest strap, because chest straps are just the most reliable way of measuring your heart rate. But I want to focus on non-chest strap options, so devices either worn on the wrist or maybe on the biceps. And that includes, for instance, the Amazfit Bip 6, a quite affordable Amazfit device. Older generation Amazfit devices weren't very good, but since a year or two, they've really stepped up their game, and they're really affordable, and you get good heart rate tracking, at least based on my testing. That's also true for the Amazfit Helio strap, so I'm wearing it here on my biceps, but you can also wear it on your wrist. In all circumstances, these give good heart rate tracking on me. The Mi Band 10 did surprisingly well. This was a somewhat limited test, but on me, under those circumstances, that also performed well. I actually retested the Amazfit Helio strap as well on my wrist, and it gives still really good performance. There's also the Huawei Watch Fit 2, an older generation Huawei device that did really well in my testing as well. And the CMF Watch 3 Pro did surprisingly well for indoor cycling. As you'll see in a second, for some of the other exercises, it didn't do quite as well, but it did do decently for indoor cycling, and the same is true for the Huawei Watch Fit 3 and the Huawei Band 10. So in general, in this price range, some of the best brands out there are Huawei with different models, Amazfit, and surprisingly the CMF Watch 3 Pro, but only for indoor cycling, as you'll see in a second. Fitbit struggle a bit more. They're not terrible, but not quite as good as some of these other brands. There's also the Coral's heart rate monitor, one on the biceps. This is an older test I did. I actually want to retest it now, because generally Coral's actually does quite well as well. And the older Mi Band 9 Pro did a little bit less well. And also the Fitbit Inspire 3 didn't do quite as well. So Fitbit with their Inspire 3, Charge 6 and Lux didn't do quite as good as some of these other brands. But this is for indoor cycling, one of the easiest exercises. Let's now make things harder, and let's take a look at the results for running, which you can see right here. By the way, if you're into running and you want to get the best custom running plans and custom guidance during your runs, I really like the Runner app. It's the app I use myself to get all my training plans for running, and it's really made a big change in how fast I run and how good I run, and also helps me slowly ramp up my training not to get injured. If you want to try it out for 2 weeks, use my affiliate link up here, which is the best deal out there. But let's get back to the results. For running, I tested a few fewer devices, but the overall patterns are largely the same, though now actually the CMF Watch 3 Pro doesn't do quite as well. And also Fitbit devices are still not doing amazing. The best device in this case are the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the biceps, surprisingly the Mi Band 10, but again this was a quite limited test with the Mi Band, and also the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the wrist. The Huawei Watch Fit 2 also did quite well, and the Pixel Watch 2 did surprisingly well. The Pixel Watch 3 and 4 have better heart rate tracking than the 2, though as you will see, for sleep stage tracking the Pixel Watch is again very good, and also Fitbit devices. So it really depends what you want to focus on. For running, I can really recommend the Amazfit Helio strap, either worn on the wrist or on the biceps, as I'm doing right here. The biceps is usually a little bit better than the wrist, and also different Huawei devices like the Huawei Watch Fit 2 are quite good. But let's now take a look at one of the hardest exercises for a device to track cycling outside. And those results are displayed right here. Again, the further to the top right the device is, the better is its agreement with the reference. And again, the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the biceps is a really top performer. Surprisingly, also the CMF Watch 3 Pro, the Huawei Watch Fit 2 and Huawei Watch Fit 3 are also doing really well. The Fitbit Charge 6 actually compared to the competition did quite well here, and also the Mi Band 10 wasn't bad at all. Now a little bit lower here we have the Pixel Watch 2, which is maybe on the edge of being good enough for some of you. I have to mention here that on me, many devices struggle a little bit more than on other people. So maybe all these devices would move up a little bit on other people. But I'm just showing you the results as I have them on my body. And generally the results are more or less consistent across different exercises. Some of the best devices include Huawei's, especially Huawei Watch Fit model, some of the older ones. There's the Amazfit Helio strap, the Mi Band 10, and maybe also some other devices from Amazfit aren't doing so bad, like the Amazfit Bip 6. Coral's heart rate monitor worn on the biceps is solid, but not amazing here. So you can really see what exercise is important for you and decide based on that. But now I want to look at one of the hardest exercises for a device to track weightlifting. This is one where I really cannot recommend many devices or any really. Only I would say the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the biceps, potentially the Huawei Watch Fit 2, but I think really the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the biceps is one of the only really realistic options for heart rate tracking during weightlifting, except for, of course, using an ECG chest strap. Now, the reason this is hard for many devices is because when you're weightlifting, there's a lot of tension on your wrists, and this basically obfuscates much of the signal that's being detected, making it very hard to actually track your heart rate. So most of the devices are just not doing very well, including the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the wrist. The wrist is just much harder during weightlifting. On the biceps, the signal stays a little bit better, so that's probably why the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the biceps is still doing quite okay. So these are the devices under $100 I would recommend for tracking your heart rate during exercise. But what about tracking your health? Can these devices also track your sleep stages, for instance, which is quite important for some of you that, for instance, want to get better sleep or maybe longer sleep or more consistent sleep. And one thing we can actually test here is the sleep stages. So can these devices track your deep sleep, your REM sleep, your light sleep, and your awake moments? Well, we're mostly going to focus on these first three. So awake time is going to be less of a focus. We're mostly going to focus on deep sleep, light sleep, and REM sleep, and how good these different brands are at that. Now, I'll first mostly focus on brands, not devices. And that's because across their entire lineup, most brands use the exact same sleep stage tracking algorithm, and the performance is more or less identical, unless the heart rate sensor is just super bad, but that almost never happens. So let's take a look. We'll take a look both at scientific literature and how different brands did there, and then my personal testing, which includes many of the latest devices out there. And I'll point out some of them I would recommend under $100, which are not many, honestly. So let's take a look at those results. But first, before getting to those results, if you want to support the channel, there's multiple ways of doing that. And the reason I ask is because running this channel next to my full-time job as a scientist is neither easy nor cheap. I pay for my editor Alex, who edits most of my videos, I buy most devices myself, and of course it adds up to thousands of dollars every month. So if you want to support, the most direct way is by becoming a YouTube member, which is basically like Patreon on YouTube, and this gives you early access to some of my videos, like this one right here for instance. Another way of supporting is by using one of my affiliate links down below, many of which give the best discount possible. Also, if you want to support continuously, one way of doing that is by going to Amazon via my general Amazon affiliate link. This doesn't cost you any extra, and if you click that first before making any Amazon purchase, even something as small as toilet paper, it supports the channel and it doesn't cost you any extra. Some people have even bookmarked it using Command or Control D. So you click it one time, press Command or Control D, bookmark it, and then before making any purchase, you click that link instead of going to Amazon.com. That supports the channel, and that's one way of doing it. Of course, only if you want to, but let's get back to the sleep stage tracking results. Now, this is an overview from scientific literature where I went through most of science and tried to find out which devices are good at sleep stage tracking and which aren't. And here I focus on the different brands. So the different brands are in different colors, and the further to the top right a device is, the better is its agreement with the reference that they used in scientific literature, which is usually polysomnography, which measures brain waves, eye movements, muscle movements, and heart rate, and combines all of these to measure your sleep stages. And you can clearly see there are some brands further to the top right, and all of these agree better with scientific literature. But this also includes many older tests, sometimes with older firmware. But I would say the general pattern is pretty clear. Not so great sleep stage tracking comes from some Chinese brands like Huawei and Xiaomi. Also Garmin and Polar aren't that great. The best brands out there at the moment are Aura, 8Sleep, the Whoop Strap, Fitbit/Google, and Apple. All of these are doing quite well, at least based on scientific literature, and some of them are even doing better now because they updated them compared to what's been tested in science. That's always a downside. Almost any scientific paper takes at least a year, maybe a year and a half to publish from start to finish. And those are really fast studies. Many of the ones I've been involved in have taken up to 4 or 5 years. But those are usually much bigger studies. Some of these tests should have been able to go through faster, but it takes some time. And some of these were already published in 2020, for instance. But that's the downside of going through the whole peer review process. It takes some time. So I also did my own testing with much more recent devices. So let's take a look at those results. The limitation here is one, that the reference device isn't quite as good, but it's actually quite close to perfect for me at least. We did some studies where we tested that device compared to the gold standard on me, and it was actually quite close to the gold standard, especially on me. I'll link that in the description below. So let's take a look at those results. The reference there is the Z-Max EEG headband, which can actually also measure my brain waves, and it's been used in several scientific studies. But let's take a look. And here we have that overview. So this is based on my testing on my body. So again, that's the limitation there. And the further to the top right a device is, the better is its agreement with the reference device. And many of the same brands are on the top right here. So the best performing brands here are Apple, 8Sleep, one of my favorite sleep improvement devices, really expensive. If you want the best discount possible, use my affiliate link up here. But it doesn't really fall into this price category. There's also Fitbit/Google, and we'll talk about those in a second because those do fall in this price category. And finally, there's the Whoop Strap, the Oura Ring, and Sleep 2, but these also don't fall into the price category under $100 we're interested in. The only brand that's doing really well in this category is Fitbit/Google. So they use the same sleep stage tracking across their entire lineup. They've always been very solid, but a few months ago, they updated their sleep stage tracking to be even better. And now they're one of the top contenders out there. So whether you have a Fitbit Charge 6, for instance, or Charge 5, or a Pixel Watch 1, 2, 3, or 4, you get really good sleep stage tracking. And in this price category, I would say a Fitbit Charge 6 or a Pixel Watch 1, you can probably get under $100 right now. Maybe for the Pixel Watch 1, it would need to be refurbished. And I think there you're going to get really solid sleep stage tracking for a good price. And I would say if you want the better build quality, get the Pixel Watch and not a Fitbit. Because Fitbits, in my experience, break a lot. A lot of Fitbits I've had in the past have broken down at some point. So if you want to get pretty good heart rate tracking and also really good sleep stage tracking, get the Pixel Watch 1. Now, the heart rate tracking will be a lot better on the Pixel Watch 3 or Pixel Watch 4, so take that into account. It might be worth it to spend a little bit more money on the Pixel Watch 3 instead of the Pixel Watch 1, but that's really up to you in the end. Now, in the medium tier, where you get pretty decent heart rate tracking but not amazing, there is still the Amazfit Helio strap, which seems to do a quite okay job, but it really struggles with the REM sleep tracking. The REM sleep segments just don't agree very well with the reference, and also if I visually inspect them, you don't really see clear sleep cycles based on the data of the Helio strap. The deep sleep tracking seems to be okay, the REM sleep not so much. So in this price category, under $100, there isn't a lot to choose from, but those are the ones I would recommend. And in this case, Huawei and Xiaomi just aren't great sleep stage trackers. So keep that in mind. But let's now move on to the last category, GPS tracking. Now, GPS tracking is actually a very difficult category to discuss in this context because many devices under $100 don't even have a built-in GPS system. So you need to connect it to your phone and it will use your phone's GPS to track your location and your speed. So that's what I mostly use my GPS tracking for. I want to know my pace during my runs, I want to know my speed during my bike rides, and I want to know the total distance traveled for both. And for many devices here, if you have a strap for instance, it will use the internal GPS of your phone and there's no GPS module in the device itself. And also many of the other smart bands, like for instance the Mi Band I believe, don't have built-in GPS. So here your options are really limited. Maybe the Pixel Watch 1 would be good enough. I do believe this has built-in GPS, but otherwise there are just very few options. And I think here you have to accept that potentially you're always going to have your phone with you to always get any type of GPS tracking, be it good or not. And the quality of that then depends a bit on your phone. If you do want good GPS tracking, you're likely going to have to upgrade to a slightly more expensive device. And for that, I would recommend my video of devices between $100 and $250, and later there will also be a video on devices over $500 where you're gonna get the best GPS tracking. But between $100 and $250 you can already get some devices from Garmin, Coros or Suunto, and these have pretty solid GPS tracking. In the video between $100 and $250 I for instance recommended the Garmin Forerunner 165, the Coros Pace 3, and I'm actually soon gonna test the new Suunto Run model that released. So those are all options in a slightly higher price range that would likely give you better GPS tracking. But of course it needs to be in your price category, and I understand that's not the case for many of you. Now I do think that some Huawei more band type models do have GPS. I don't know if the actual band, Huawei band has it, but the Huawei Watch Fit often does have built-in GPS. So if you can find a good deal on a Huawei Watch Fit 2 or 3, that might actually be an option as well for many of you out there. You won't get good sleep stage tracking, but you will get GPS tracking built in and pretty good heart rate tracking. But again, it depends what your focus is. This isn't the one size fits all kind of thing. You need to decide what is important for you and also what ecosystem you're comfortable being a part of. Because some of these Chinese brands might not be something you're comfortable with, or you might not want to work with an American company. It really depends what you want. Now, if you do end up getting an older Pixel Watch, a Fitbit, a Mi Band, a Huawei Band, an Amazfit device, another device, or anything at all on Amazon for that matter, even something as small as toilet paper, or maybe you need a new cap, you want the best discount possible and at the same time support the channel, there's different affiliate links in the description below, none of which cost you any extra and many of which provide the best discount possible. Now before fully closing this video, it just popped into my mind. I mentioned that some straps like the Amazfit Helio strap right here don't have built-in GPS, but some of the cheaper Amazfit devices I mentioned in this video will have GPS built in. I think the Active 2 for sure, and I think also the Bip 6, both of which you can find for under $100, do have built-in GPS. So there's also other options that do have GPS built into the actual device that aren't that expensive. Now, given that you watched this whole video, I think you might also be interested in slightly more expensive devices between $100 and $250, and my recommendations for that are up here. And there's also this video on one of the most expensive devices out there, the H Sleep Pod.